I'm not what you would call an expert on the history of baseball or any of the famous people who left a major impact on the sport, so I can't really gauge any major accuracies or inaccuracies when it comes to the historical events depicted. However, that's not really the major important thing when it comes to films like this. I mean, to a certain degree. I mean, if you're covering a major event that a lot of people know about, it gets you points if you're accurate, but I think the biggest thing that's important for films like these is, can it work as a film? And, well, in my opinion, this film works, but it has a few flaws. With that said, let's begin this episode of Romney's Reviews. Now this film gets off to a pretty bad start. I mean, first it starts with kind of this expositional onslaught, kind of trying to set the stage, but doesn't really do anything to set the tone. It like does the whole thing, like in the post-World War II years, people were coming home, famous baseball players, all these players were white, Even though that's the kind of stuff you could show visually. I mean, I understand trying to set the tone, but even the way the voiceover was delivered and the way that stock footage was edited was really rushed and really sloppy. It didn't really set the tone very well. And they have that juxtaposed the whole, this is a true story, 42. That part didn't work. It picks up in the middle when we actually get to see Jackie Robinson and actually get to follow him throughout the story, for the most part. There are some weird bits with the editing where things kind of either move, well, mostly where things move too quickly, and then some bits where they're just like saying, yeah, this is more of the boring stuff, we're gonna try to get through this as quickly as possible. Particularly with the ending. The ending, it felt like they forgot to write and shoot an actual ending, so they had to salvage it with what they had shot. It doesn't feel all that conclusive. It doesn't really give you the feeling of an ending. It just feels like it stops kind of in the middle of the big game they're in against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Even after it does the whole, like, such and such went on to do this, such and such got transferred to this, such and such was fired, it's just a case of, it didn't really feel that, it didn't have that satisfying of a conclusion to me. Now, another major thing that bothered me is that the story doesn't really focus on Jackie Robinson, even though it's marketing itself as the life story of Jackie Robinson. We never really got to see a lot of his days before he became a baseball player, even in the Negro Leagues. We don't know enough about Jackie Robinson aside from what little we're shown. It keeps bouncing back and forth between him, some of the other players that are not wanting to play with him, but then eventually do an about face, and then Ricky, which I understand when you've got Harrison Ford, it's Harrison Ford, he's a good actor, you want to get as many scenes with him as you can, but it's just kind of a case of, I really would have liked the film to really have focused on the life of Jackie Robinson as it was advertised, which it doesn't really focus so much on his life as it focuses on what happens in the games. Now, one thing I can give the film credit for is that these are some of the best baseball sequences I've seen in a while. I mean, it's really shot really well, edited really well. I mean, it's like really cool to actually see them actually play the game. You see Jackie Robinson kind of getting ready to steal the bases, gets you really hooked. It's almost kind of a case of, yeah, it feels like a sports movie. You actually get invested. You're just like, come on, steal that base. You're almost like ready to cheer when he succeeds, and you hear, and it also hooks you in when the bad stuff happens. So overall, it's an okay film. The baseball sequences are really good, and you get some really good character bits, but it kind of can't decide whether or not it's a historical film or a sports movie. It's like it can't make up its mind. However, it loses some points for some of the visual effects stuff where you can tell that they do stuff in front of a green screen, even though it's not really needed in a film where they're not really doing something outlandish. And then there's just the case of the editing bits in the beginning and the ending, as well as just the general hamminess of some of the speech and the general Oscar bait nature of the film, because this film is unapologetically Oscar bait. Now, towards the end of the film, it actually has some scenes that are like that scene that actually do a really good job, especially when you have Jackie Robinson's emotional breakdown where he smashes the bat against a wall and breaks it. That scene was good. But a lot of the other ones with all these other speeches, just a case of, yeah, I see what you're doing. It's kind of pandering to the award season crowd, even though you're releasing it in April. Kind of jumping the gun a little bit, aren't we? And I know everyone's saying, oh, but they released it in April because baseball, they wear the number 42 in April. I get that, But I'm just thinking from like a film standpoint, they really jumped the gun here if they wanted to get their film any major notice or praise by any of the major industry people. They really kind of fired too early. That said, I'm giving 42 a 4 out of 5. Like I said, it's a good film. It's very enjoyable if you're into baseball. And the actual baseball sequences are actually really good in this film, but it loses points for some of the editing stuff at the beginning, at the ending, the clunky exposition that they try there, and the fact that they don't really focus on Jackie Robinson as much as a film touting itself to be the life story of Jack and Robinson should. So that's it for this week's episode of Raw News Reviews. As for next week, I'll be reviewing Oblivion. And no, I don't mean the Elder Scrolls Xbox game, I mean the film starring Tom Cruise based on the comic from Radical Press. I mean, why would I review Oblivion when everybody's still playing Skyrim? I mean, if I was reviewing Elder Scrolls Online, maybe, and this joke is really stupid. Anyway, next week is Oblivion. I'll see you all then.